Welcome to the best trails of 2025. I'm Bonnie, and as is tradition on this channel, it's the end of the year and I am going to be sharing with you my favorite trails that I explored in the year of 2025. And as always, this is a very subjective list, which is pretty much just biased towards the things that I like and the experience that I had on trail. But it was an amazing year exploring in Washington. I got to see so many places that I have had on my list for so long, and I got to really challenge myself in the Alpine this year. I feel like I really progressed a lot and had a lot of fun. And it was just so much fun. I love this state. I love how diverse the landscapes are. The Alpine is incredible. The eastern half of the state is incredible. The western forests are amazing. It's just beautiful, and there's still so much more to explore. So I am going to be sharing my top 5 trails with a few honorable mentions, and I am going to be doing it in reverse order, so you're gonna have to stick around to the end if you want to see what my favorite trail of the year was. But first, some statistics. In 2025, I did 81,368 feet of elevation gain and covered 221.5 miles. And it's always fun, I think, at the end of the year to add up these statistics and just put it all into perspective, because it doesn't feel like a lot when you're doing it in these small chunks, but adding it all together really paints a picture. Now onto the list, and I'm going to be starting with my 2 honorable mentions. These were trails that were great and really left an impression on me, but they just weren't quite enough to get into that top 5. The first honorable mention goes to Mount Forgotten. I've had this peak on my list for some time, and it was partially because of the name of the mountain and partially because of the look of the mountain. It has this really cool kind of crescent-shaped summit, and it was a really beautiful time in the Alpine. The Mount Forgotten Meadows, the portion of the meadows all the way to the summit was just alpine bliss. Gorgeous meadows. I couldn't have asked for better conditions. The only thing that knocked it down a little bit is this approach is really long for this mountain. You are in the forest for the first 4 miles, and it can feel like a slog, especially at the end of a long day. I think that it is really one of the coolest mountains that I climbed this year, and I keep thinking about those meadows and just how green and lush and solitary it was. That was the other thing with Mount Forgotten, is it really did live up to its name. I didn't see anyone else all day, which is always just such a treat in the wilderness. My next honorable mention is a mountain much further east, and that would be 4th of July Mountain. I climbed this for my birthday trip this year, and it is so unique, short and sweet, but what really makes this one special is the view. The view from the summit of Lake Chelan, just kind of putting into perspective how big that lake is and its unique shape, is just so cool. You really don't get that very often. It is hard to climb a lot of the mountains around Lake Chelan, and that one just offered a really cool perspective. It wasn't quite as spectacular as some of the other ones that I did, but that definitely is a fun little trail that I would absolutely revisit again and again. It absolutely delivered for my birthday, so I was very happy. Now on to the list. These are the 5 trails that have stuck with me the most this year, and I'm also going to be sprinkling in a few more honorifics in between as we go, because as I like to do, because I like to highlight a lot of different types of trails that I explored throughout the year. But we're going to start with number 5, and that would be Leichenberg Mountain. Leichenberg is one of those mountains that I have looked at for a long time because Lake Valhalla is a favorite hike of my family. We do it quite a lot together. And so I've always just been looking up at Leichenberg. And I gotta say, I never really thought I would be able to climb it. But after doing some research about the summit and the routes and reading some reports, I figured I would just try and go for it. And it was an adventure. Honestly, the bushwhack, which make up the final mile and a half of this route is part of what made it so fun, because it was a new kind of challenge, and that's when it really started to feel like remote wilderness, leaving the PCT and getting into the Alpine and really doing the route finding and everything like that. But the real highlight for me was not the true summit itself, it was climbing the East Spire, which is that big pointy part that you see from down at Lake Valhalla. And this was one where I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to climb it. There are only a few people who've ever mentioned doing it, so there really wasn't a lot of information. So I was not sure if this was going to be within my capabilities to do, but I figured I would go and check it out, and I found a route up that thing, and that view from the spire was just incredible, out of this world. It was so satisfying to climb. One of the most satisfying summits I think I have ever had, just because I had to do a lot of the planning myself. The route finding was satisfying. It was just all great. It was hard, but the good kind of hard that's very satisfying. Going off of that, I wanted to highlight my favorite lake. This is going to be just my favorite lake or lake view that I visited, and it really does have to be that top-down view of Lake Valhalla from Leichenberg. I saw a lot of gorgeous lakes this year, Lake Chelan, many alpine lakes, but I worked really hard to get that specific top-down view of Lake Valhalla, and it is really special to get to look directly down on an alpine lake like that. Especially a lake that I have visited many times before with my family, so getting to see it from a different perspective was really special, and honestly, those are some of my favorite photos of the year came from that view specifically of Lake Valhalla. Coming in at number 4, I have another mountain on the list, and that would be Mount Pew. This is one I have also had on my list for a while. It's kind of been in the back of my head where I'm like, oh, maybe this will be the week I go do Pew. But the length of the trail and the amount of elevation gain you have to do in one day was always like, oh, I'm not feeling up to climbing 5,000 feet this week, maybe next week. So I kept putting it off. But this was a route that I was really excited about, because I was less excited about the summit, but more the actual trail itself, because Mount Pew boasts this beautiful exposed ridgeline that you get to climb when you do this trail, and it was as fun as I had hoped. But I don't know what I was worried about, and I was also really happy with the conditions that day. It was a little smoky, but that did not ruin the views or the trail for me. And I got to see that beautiful undercast of clouds as well, which was just so pretty. I think this is one where the trail is the fun part as well as the summit. This was like type 1 fun all the way through. Absolutely loved it. I'm so glad that I got it on such a great day, and yeah, definitely a new favorite. The next thing I want to shout out is my favorite trail east of the Cascades, because I did one thing that I have wanted to do for a long time this year, and that is do more trails in eastern Washington. It is further away for me, but there's so many unique places out there, and this year I definitely got to get out that direction more and start exploring. And honestly, this entry was the hardest part of my list to pick, because I loved every trail that I did in eastern Washington. They were all so different and really cool, especially if you're a geology nerd like me. It was just amazing. But there was one, and I knew it had to be this one, because it is the reason I planned a whole trip to drive 4 hours away from home, and that would be Steamboat Rock. I have wanted to climb Steamboat Rock for a while, ever since I learned about it watching a geology lecture, because it's just got such an interesting shape. And I found out, of course, you can climb to the top of it, and I did this for my birthday trip as well, and I did it later in the day, so the lighting was beautiful. And then The view is just so different. It's so far east. It's so different from even some of the stuff that I do in like the Vantage area and stuff. So that was really cool. And then I saw a herd of deer on top of the rock. It was just perfect, you know, wildlife sighting. Amazing rock. It's such a unique geologic feature. I'm so glad I got to see it. While Mount Pew was type 1 fun, the next trail on my list was definitely type 2 fun, but I prefer type 2 fun, so that's why it's higher. And that would be Big Craggy Peak. It would not be a best of the year video without a top 100 peak making an appearance. What can I say? They're always an adventure. So I climbed Big Craggy Peak for Larch season, and it's another of the top 100 peaks in Washington, and it involves a lot of off-trail navigation through burned forest, then through scree, then through loose rock, but the reward is one of the most remote feelings I have ever had in this state. It was just so tranquil. It was just me and the mountain and the larch trees. I just couldn't have asked for better conditions. The fact that it was hard and some parts were really annoying to do just made it that much more satisfying. And yeah, it was one of those things where I really pushed myself to put up with a lot of annoying suffering in the mountains, but it was so worth it. A really unique view, and my first time in the Pasaytons, and let me tell you, I am obsessed and I will be back. But yeah, that's why I love Top 100 Peaks. They make me go places all over the state. They make me learn new things, and they're always an adventure. So Big Craggy Peak absolutely delivered. But speaking of a lot of rocks, now I want to talk about my favorite scramble. I got to do a lot of scrambling all over the state this year, from the rocks of Eastern Washington to more remote summits. I got to do a lot of scrambling, and that is my favorite thing to be doing, so I was very happy. And one of them absolutely stood out, and that would be the Tommy Hoy Peak Summit Block Scramble. I absolutely see why that is a Washington classic. It was just so much fun. I love that the perceived exposure is different from the actual exposure, and the summit block just looks insane. It looks like it is going to be impossible to climb. But then you get on it and it's actually super fun, and all the holds are great, and you get this incredible view the entire time. The biggest challenge with Tommy Hoy is really your mind. This is a pretty straightforward scramble, but yeah, you definitely feel like you're rock climbing with some points of exposure, and how cool the summit block looks, and is just so much fun. I absolutely see why that is a classic, and it should be. It is really cool. Tommy Hoy is not just a scramble, it is number 2 on my list of trails. And this is about more than just the summit block, okay? We talked about the summit block and the scrambling, but this is about the entire route. And that is what put Tommy Hoy so high for me, because it was just alpine bliss most of this route. You are in the alpine pretty much after you break the forest in the first like mile and a half. It's a long route, but it is just so pretty. You don't even care. You're just happy to be out there. And the day I went, the weather was gorgeous. And yeah, just the views of the mountains are really unique, especially that far north. You get to see American Border Peak, and then also at the summit you get views into Canada, because this is right on the Canadian-USA border. So that is really unique, but it is just this gorgeous walk through the alpine, and it just makes for an amazing day climb. Like, you will not be disappointed if you go here during clear weather and you get to explore. The wind was crazy the day that I climbed, but honestly, that only added to it. I love a good windy summit. That just made it more adventurous. Now, before I get to number one, I want to do something that I do every year when I make my best of the year videos, and that would be the best trail under 1,000 feet of elevation gain, because I love to do challenging trails, long trails, and usually trails that involve a lot of gain. But there are a lot of incredible trails all over that do not have a lot of gain and take you to some incredible places. So this year is no exception. My best trail under 1,000 feet of gain would be Blue Lake. I just hiked this a month ago, and I did it in the snow, so I made it a little extra difficult on myself, but it is a 4.5-mile trail with 900 feet of elevation gain to a beautiful alpine lake in the North Cascades. And I really don't think you can beat that. That's crazy. You get to see some of Washington's most gorgeous mountains. You get to see an alpine lake for a pretty low cost of admission, I think. I saw it in winter conditions, but it is also beautiful in the summer and the fall. So you can go and see the lake melted out. It's this beautiful blue color, and it's also known for its fall color. But yeah, I was really impressed with that trail. I just think it's crazy that you can see all of that and you don't have to do a ton of crazy climbing. So yeah, Blue Lake is definitely on my recommended for beginners list. That was a really fun one. And now for my favorite trail of 2025. If you've watched the videos this year, you could probably make a good guess at what this is, because there is a really special trail that I have not mentioned yet, and that would be Camp Muir. Camp Muir is one of those places that I have heard about for literally my entire life from my parents who have both been. And it was always one of those places that felt impossible. Like, I never thought I would be capable of climbing up there, let alone have the desire to. And even after I got back into hiking, it was always like Camp Muir felt like too much. But it re-entered my radar, and I was like, I want to go for it. I know how I handle elevation. I'm in shape. Let's do it. And I waited for the perfect weather window to get up to Mount Rainier National Park, and I climbed this in early June. And it was really everything I had hoped it would be. I started before sunrise, so I got to see sunrise on the slopes of Mount Rainier, which was just stunning. And Camp Muir really is a one-of-a-kind place in Washington. It has all of this history. Like, this is where Rainier climbing dreams come, and you can just kind of get that sense there. There's a lot of people who are very excited to climb the mountain up there. But it's also one of, I believe, the only permanent climbing camp in Washington. Like, that is not a very common thing in the Cascades to have actual, like, huts and services up at over 10,000 feet. So it is a really unique spot. And again, I had the perfect day. And I also got to do the most glissading I have ever done, which was super, super fun. And I loved climbing up by myself in the morning. There were not a lot of people out. I only encountered 2 others. Going back down, I got to meet more people, a lot of people who were very excited to climb the mountain. It's just a really cool energy and one-of-a-kind views. But at over 10,000 feet, that is the highest I have climbed in Washington, so that made it really special. And also just getting up so close with Mount Rainier and seeing all of those glaciers up close, it just really is a force of nature and just gives a completely different perspective on the mountain. Absolutely incredible day hike. I could go on and on and on about Camp Muir, but If you're wondering if it is worth the trouble to climb up there, go for it. It absolutely is. It is just a one-of-a-kind place. So those were my favorite trails of 2025. And as always, I am so grateful that I have the ability to get out and explore the beautiful nature that I have around me. I love this place so much, and it is always a privilege to get to see the mountains here. And thank you so much for sticking around and watching. I definitely appreciate the support and the lovely comments. I don't always get the chance to respond to all of them, but I do see them, so thank you so much. And feel free to share below in the comments what some of your favorite places that you got to explore this year were. Could be anywhere in the world, and also some places that you are excited to go see in 2026. I know I have a big list of trouble that I am working on already for next year. I have definitely gone on long enough. I could talk about mountains forever, but the video does have to end eventually. So thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year. And here are my favorite pictures from 2025. Enjoy.